What if you remembered dying in a life you'd never lived? Not some fuzzy dream, but a real, physical memory of water filling your lungs, of darkness, of rebar twisted around your leg as the entire world just ended around you.
For Jinho, a 31-year-old design engineer, this wasn't some weird hypothetical. It was a memory that haunted him, a quiet terror that would just bubble up anytime he saw running water.
So this is the story of how that one, single, impossible memory set him on a path to either save what was left of humanity or go down in history as a complete madman. Now, before we dive in, if you enjoy stories like this, please follow the channel and share this. It genuinely helps this page grow and lets me create more stories just like this one for you. Okay, so the moment everything changed for him came at 3:47 in the morning. Jinho's on his cold bathroom floor, kind of mesmerized by this thin stream of water from the tap, when two words just materialize in his vision, like subtitles in a movie. Welcome back.
A survival system boots up in his head, and it hits him with three terrifying facts. Bang, bang, bang. 1. The world is going to end in a global flood in exactly 118 days. 2. He's in something called a repeated cycle. And 3. That drowning he remembers so vividly, it wasn't a dream. It actually happened. He'd already lived through this, and he'd already died.
You'd think he'd freak out, right? But no. Jinho didn't panic, not for a second. How could he? He remembered everything. He remembered the smell of rot, the taste of dirty rainwater, the faces of the people he couldn't save. This wasn't some warning, it was a do-over. And this time, he was going to be ready.
The mission was simple, and yet completely impossible. Build a floating fortress that could actually survive the apocalypse. Last time, he wasted months trying to warn people. They just laughed at him. This time, he would build in silence.
But there was one massive problem. The system calculated the cost for this ark at over 1.8 billion won. Jinho's entire life savings, every bit of credit he could get, it barely made a dent. The deficit was catastrophic, nearly 1.5 billion won short. And he had just over 100 days to get it.
And this is where he gets clever, really clever. Jinho knew he couldn't ask people to fund his Doomsday shelter, so he didn't. He disguised his ark as the future of urban living, a sleek, innovative, green architecture project. And people, totally captivated by the beautiful designs he drew himself, actually started to invest.
But you can't pull a fast one on a man who spent 28 years in construction. The veteran foreman he hired, a guy named Choi Bongu, took one look at the blueprints, the triple redundant generators, the huge supply stores, the medical block, and he saw right through it. He knew exactly what it was, and he agreed to build it, not for money, but for 2 spots on board. Just like that, the first 2 members of the crew were in.
But look, a foreman and an engineer, no matter how good they are, can't build and run an ark by themselves. Jinho needed a crew. And right as he's thinking this, a new feature on the system pops up. It starts highlighting people who weren't just critical for the project to succeed, but who were also fated to die in the flood.
First, the system leads him to Ha-Yoon Sol, a brilliant hydraulic engineer who actually found his public plans and pointed out 4 critical design flaws. Then he finds Pak Se-ia, a journalist, literally climbing the fence to get a story. She ends up documenting their whole race against time. He seeks out Im Jian, an infectious disease specialist, to redesign his medbay to fight the waterborne diseases that killed so many people in his first life. And finally, he saves Yeonmira, an agronomist, from an attack, and she turns out to be the key to their long-term survival. In his last life, he was totally alone. This time, he had a team.
And then, on the 118th day, at 4:22 in the morning, it began. The water didn't come crashing down in some giant tsunami. No, it rose quietly, relentlessly, like someone had slowly opened a tap for the entire world. First the river, then the sewers, then right up from the ground itself, until all of Seoul was just drowning.
The platform lifted perfectly, just like the engineer Ha-Yoon Sol said it would. For 2 days, there was just silence. Then the first survivors showed up. By day 8, a small, desperate little flotilla of 11 boats was keeping a cautious distance. But that same evening, a different kind of survivor arrived, one that wasn't looking for help, but for prey.
A fishing boat, now a raider vessel, pulls up demanding their resources. But Jinho doesn't fight with guns, he fights with engineering. He has Yoon's soul adjust the anchor cables, literally raising their side of the platform up to create a sheer 3-meter concrete wall. When the raiders throw a grappling hook, he lets it catch on a specific railing he had designed to be removable. A few turns of a wrench and the first guy to climb, along with the rope, just plunges into the water. The raiders, totally stunned by a defense they couldn't even comprehend, just left.
But dealing with desperate people was just the beginning. The system soon issued a new warning. A threat was emerging that it had no data on, because in his first life, Jinho had died long before this thing could ever evolve.
Jinho picks up this low-frequency rhythmic sound on the hydrophones. It wasn't mechanical. It was organic. It was big, and it was coming for them. The flood hadn't just drowned the world. It had created a vast, contaminated primordial soup, and something was adapting to it at terrifying speed.
And these weren't just big fish. They were intelligent. Jinho and his crew found themselves in this crazy underwater arms race. They used bright lights to drive away the first scout, a 4-meter creature. So it learned and stopped reacting to light. They used a painful ultrasonic field. It learned to wait just outside the range. The creatures were actively studying them, adapting in real time, all led by this massive 9 to 11-meter hunter.
The climax of this whole conflict comes when Jinho forges an alliance with a surviving Navy corvette. He realizes the hunter's new tactic, waiting patiently at a distance, was also its biggest weakness. It was a stationary target. Using his platform's incredibly precise hydrophone data, he guided the corvette's torpedo crew, giving them real-time coordinates. One explosion later, the signal from the hunter was gone.
With the greatest biological threats seemingly gone and the first signs of the water slowly receding, the world began to feel, well, stable, safe even. But it was right then that the system delivered its most profound and world-altering notification yet.
An anomaly. A signal detected 340 kilometers to the north across the open ocean. A signal that was similar to the one that first activated his survival system. It could be the source of the system itself, or it could be another survivor. Another person who had died and been given a second chance, just like him.
And this presents the ultimate choice. He has built the safest place in this new drowned world, a fortress of concrete and steel. Does he stay, protecting the community he's gathered, or does he captain his ark into the vast, unknown ocean, searching not just for survival anymore, but for answers?
In his first life, he died a victim, alone in the dark, trapped by rebar. In this life, he is an explorer, the captain of an ark, surrounded by a crew who chose to follow him. He survived. But now, he has to decide what to live for. If this story moved you or made you think differently, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and follow the channel for more stories like this.